Good evening all. My name is Talha Köse. I am the director of SETA Brussels office. So welcome to our panel. Tonight we're going to discuss overall developments in 2020 in terms of foreign policy, especially Turkish foreign policy. And we will try to reflect on the upcoming year. So what may be the significant issues, possibilities for 2021. So it was a remarkable year actually, and we will remember with many developments, and for both Turkish foreign policy as well as the regional politics. So it started with the assassination of Qasem Soleimani, one of the significant figures of Iranian Republican forces. And Turkey's operations in Idlib and Libya were significant military operations where military side of the foreign policy was used. And Nagorno-Karabakh issue became another significant issue for 2020. So in addition to those military operations and tensions, we had Turkey had some tensions in the Eastern Mediterranean with Athens, Paris. This led to some tensions with the EU. Also, S-400 debate and CAATSA sanctions were part of 2020 foreign policy agenda. So despite all tensions with the EU, President's emphasis on a strategic partnership with EU and positive expectations and positive agenda was important. So we still don't know how this positive agenda will move forward. But overall, COVID-19 was the most important story. And within this context, we also had presidential elections in US, which will affect the entire American foreign policy as well as the world politics in general. So we have four very important commentators and experts. We're gonna discuss different aspects of Turkey's foreign policy, evaluate 2020, and also will reflect on some possibilities for 2021. So today we have four speakers. Bilgehan Alagöz will be our first speaker. She is the foreign policy coordinator at Center for Iranian Studies and also lecturer in Marmara University. Our second speaker is Çiğdem Naz. She is the Economic Development Foundation and at the same time a professor at Yıldız Technical University. Kılıç Buğra Kanat is the research director at SETA Washington office, and he is also a professor at Pennsylvania State University. And our final commentator and speaker is Vishne Korkmaz from Nişantaşı University. So we will start with the Middle East with Bilgehan, then move forward with the Europe with Çiğdem Naz. Kılıç Buğra will talk about American politics and elections, and Vishne will comment on China and Russia. So we will start with Bilgehan. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Talha, for having me. It's a great pleasure to be with all these distinguished speakers. Actually, 2020 was a hard year for all of the world, but for Iran, it was a little bit harder. As you mentioned, the year started with the targeted killing of Qasem Soleimani, and the year ended with the assassination of Fakhrizadeh. These two people were very key people for the Iran's strategy in the Middle East, because Soleimani was the symbol of Iran's axis of resistance policy, and Fakhrizadeh was the symbol of Iran's nuclear program. So I hope 2021 will be a prosperous year, but it is very clear that it's going to be a year in which we will discuss Iran's relations with the international community, especially with the upcoming US administration. And also, Turkish foreign policy will be under this influence because Turkey is an ally with the United States, and also Turkey is a neighboring country with Iran. So the probable diplomacy between Iran and the United States will also have direct implications on Turkish foreign policy. I would like to draw your attention to the possible Biden administration policies towards Iran. People always discuss nowadays what a Biden administration will mean for the Middle East. Some people say that Middle East will not be on the priority list, but when we look at the appointments for the foreign policy positions, we see people who directly have a Middle East past in their career. I mean, Antony Blinken, Jake Sullivan, and also Lloyd Austin. These all people are very much engaged in Middle East politics. So to me, the Biden administration will probably focus on the Middle East politics to a great extent. And the number one issue will be sure the future of Iran nuclear deal. During the Trump administration, United States withdrew from JCPOA, which was adopted in the UN Security Council in 2015. And after all, United States started maximum pressure policy, and Iran got affected to a great extent, but on the other hand, Iran didn't give up its main policies. I mean, Iran still continued to pursue its nuclear program, and also Iran didn't limit its presence in Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, or Yemen. So the main focus will be still the general Middle East balance of power, and Turkey will try to create its own place in this system. For Turkey, Iran is a very important neighbor. Starting from 2017, Turkey and Iran are cooperating with each other in terms of security. Following the visit of Iran's Chief of Staff, Mohammad Bakri, Turkey and Iran started cooperation in Iraq, in Syria, and the struggle against PKK became the number one issue between the two countries. And when we look at Biden's approach to Syria and Iraq, there seems some unclear positions, because it is still not clear whether United States will increase the military capacity or not, or also in Syria whether there is gonna be a continuity towards arming YPG, or there is gonna be another approach in Syria. So from Turkish point of view, the dialogue between Iran and United States, I mean, the nuclear discussions are always supported. But on the other hand, for Syria, Turkey has its own policy. For Turkey, PKK and its all affiliations, whether the name is YPG or SDF, all are main security concerns, and Turkey will do any operation if there is any need, whether there is any stance or support. And also, along with Russia, Turkey and Iran are cooperating with each other as part of Astana process. So in 2021, we will probably see a continuity in this process. I'd like to once again turn back to the nuclear issue, because this is gonna be a main issue which will have direct implications in the Middle East. There are some, especially the Persian Gulf Arab countries, are very hesitant about any nuclear deal, because during the Trump administration, most of these states were very pleased about with the Trump's decisions. Recently, James Jeffrey, who is the special representative for Syria, had an interview, and he drew attention to the fact that Obama administration was full of mistakes, and most of these Middle Eastern countries were pleased with Trump's decisions. So I assume that there is gonna be a resistance in this part of geography, and also Israel is very hesitant about probable nuclear agreement, and at this point Turkey's position will be very critical, because all these actors, the regional actors, will try to have closer relations with Turkey in order to balance Iran's increasing power in the region. And when we look at the US politics, we see a division inside United States, even among the Democrats, because the progressives are mostly supportive of the dialogue with Iran, but the moderates, who are most close to the neocons, are hesitant about Iran's nuclear program. We can maybe see a repeat of the past if Biden continues or adopts all of the Obama policies, because in 2015, during the JCPOA negotiations, the Republican senators and Democrat senators in the US Senate cooperated with each other and enacted a law which was called Iran Nuclear Agreement Review Act, and this act prevented the US president from waiving or suspending sanctions without congressional approval against Iran. So first of all, Biden has to persuade his own party. Inside his party, there is a great resistance against Iran, and also he has to persuade the Republicans, and also he has to persuade his Middle Eastern allies in the region. So I want to, as a scholar who focuses on Iran foreign policy, I'd like to be optimistic about any dialogue between Iran and international community, but I have to be a realist person. So when it comes to the rhetoric, it is easy to say that there is gonna be a return to the nuclear agreement, but in practice, it seems that it is not that much easy. And also, Biden team has mentioned that there is gonna be a follow-up agreement once US returns to the nuclear deal, and this follow-up will probably include Iran's ballistic missile program and Iran's presence in Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, and Yemen. And as a person who focuses on Iran's foreign policy, I am pretty sure that Iran will not accept this kind of approach, because for Iran, it is not something that can be discussed. It is a vital strategy for Iran. So for Turkey, I can say that Turkey can be once again mediator between Iran and international community. Turkey can act together with European Union, because European Union has a goodwill to pursue the dialogue between Iran and international community. We will see. I think I can stop here. Maybe I can continue with the Q&A session. if I summarize, the number one issue will be Iran's nuclear program and its relations with the international community, and the second and third one will be Iraq's future and the ongoing dispute inside Syria and Yemen. And Turkey will create its own strategies for all these issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Bilgehan. So I think we'll have more questions in Q&A section, and we'll have more opportunities to explore Turkish-Iranian relations. So now we'll switch to our second speaker, Çiğdem Hanım.
Thank you. Thank you very much also for inviting me. I will speak about, as you have mentioned at the beginning, about Turkey and EU relations. What are our expectations? As Bilgehan has already started, 2020 has been quite a tough year in every sense of the word, and also in Turkey-EU relations as well. We have seen mostly what we may call as intransigence in the relations, and also a continuing stalemate in Turkey's accession process. So Turkey, within the eyes of the European Union, had quite an indeterminate status. Although it continued to be a candidate country, it was also defined as a rival, as a threat by some of the EU member states. So there was, I think, quite a dilemma in terms of how the EU treated Turkey and what kind of policies actually it wanted to implement towards Turkey. On the part of Turkey, of course, as the government has suggested, our membership goal persisted. The EU remained as a strategic goal. However, the expectations of the EU regarding reforms in Turkey in areas such as democracy, human rights, rule of law, independence of the judiciary were not really carried out at a satisfactory level. So this sort of expectations and capability gap continued, we can say. Of course, in addition to the political aspects of the relationship, we also had several issues and problems in especially foreign policy areas. First and of course foremost, the Eastern Mediterranean became an area where the EU, especially some of the member states of the EU and Turkey's interests clashed. So we began to see a geopolitical sort of gap or shift in this region. Turkey, I think, mostly felt that it was sidelined, especially with regard to the establishment of some fora, such as the Eastern Gas Forum, due to also its problems with some of the countries in this, such as Egypt. Turkey did not take part, and also maybe the other countries in this process ignored the fact that Turkey also had legitimate interest in the region, had also, Mediterranean, regarding the Mediterranean, had a maritime zone expectations, and also, of course, they also maybe underestimated the impact that disagreements over the Cyprus issue, over maritime zones delimitation, or the Aegean, how much of a problem these issues could cause. Then we also saw, of course, clashes over, especially Libya, with some of the member states, maybe first and foremost with France, and with Greece and the southern Greek administration. Also, we have seen, again, clashes regarding territorial waters, the delimitation of maritime zones, and the hydrocarbon explorations proved to be a problem in this respect. And we also observed some clashes, such as naval incidents with including a French frigate and Turkish Navy vessels which was protested by President Macron, and also recently searching of a Turkish cargo ship within the framework of the EU operation Irini. So this also created maybe a further decoupling and divergence between Turkey's foreign policy, Turkey's interests, and the EU's interests. And we have seen that the EU maybe as a requirement of solidarity among member states also wholeheartedly supported the Greek and Greek Cypriot positions, both with regard to Eastern Mediterranean and also the Aegean. So this lack of agreement on these major issues created a further divergence, we can say. And also, on the part of the EU, I think what was a very important question regarding relations with Turkey was what kind of a policy to implement. Would it be a policy of carrots or a policy of sticks? Would it be sanctions or would it be further engagement? And I mean, coming from a civil society organization, in addition to my academic status, I know that several civil society organizations from Turkey also in their communication with different officials of the European Union, mostly focused on engagement between Turkey and the European Union, the need for engagement. However, we have seen that none of the processes, neither the accession process nor other, let's say, potential areas of cooperation such as customs union modernization or visa liberalization could not really be implemented. So we have seen a certain stalemate in addition to the intransigence in especially foreign policy issues. As you have mentioned at the start of the webinar, in October, the European Council offered a positive political agenda to Turkey, which included some areas of further cooperation, like customs union modernization, people-to-people contacts, trade facilitation, refugee cooperation, and also high-level dialogues. So it did not really have any sort of mention about the membership perspective. However, especially maybe the most important part regarding this positive agenda was about the customs union modernization. However, this positive political agenda offer was made conditional upon a change in Turkey's approach to the Eastern Mediterranean question, especially ending of its activities, the exploration activities in Eastern Mediterranean, which was not really acceptable, as was also seen in a declaration by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. On the part of Turkey, this issue was mostly seen as an issue of sovereignty and defense of legitimate rights of Turkey. However, the EU mostly presented this issue as a violation of the sovereignty of its own member states and also a violation of international law. So it proved to be a very difficult issue because the positions of the parties differed, were opposed to each other, and we have seen that especially countries such as Greece, France, Austria also favored further sanctions towards Turkey. We also know that previously some sanctions have already been implemented towards Turkey, but especially in the December European Council, there were expectations that harsher sanctions would be adopted. However, we have seen that in the December European Council, the majority of the member states, especially I think Germany, also advocated for a delay of the discussion of Turkey relations, especially to the March European Council. And until then, it was said that the offer of a positive agenda was still on the table, that this could still be implemented. And there was also another idea of convening a multilateral conference on Eastern Mediterranean, and the High Representative for Foreign and Security Policy, Joseph Borrell, was also given the task of making the necessary preparations. So on the part of EU, maybe some more measures that could trigger a rapprochement, let's say, between Turkey and the EU was still on the table. However, on the part of Turkey, this offer was not really seen under that light as a rapprochement, but further imposition of conditions upon Turkey. So this proved to be a very difficult issue. And we see that Turkey being accused of delinquency, violation of international laws, also created maybe a further estrangement from the European Union. However, still we have seen, at least at the discourse level, that the leadership in Turkey continued to adhere to the goal of EU membership. So looking to the next steps of the relations, especially what we can expect from 2021, maybe we have to take some factors into account. So what is changing, let's say? What kind of variables are changing which may impact on the relationship in the coming year? One important, of course, change which also will, I think, influence Turkey-EU relations is, of course, the change in the United States, especially the new President Biden. And we see on the part of the EU that there are expectations of a strengthened EU-US partnership in this new era. Maybe not a total return to multilateralism, but much more engagement with multilateral fora, also issues of human rights, climate, environment, all these issues will be maybe much more important compared to the Trump administration. So maybe in this period we can see if we see a strengthened EU-US partnership. Also, this partnership could include Turkey and policies towards Turkey. So we can say that maybe some pressure will be applied on Turkey regarding a rapprochement with the West, with the United States and the European Union. This may also come, of course, in the form of sanctions in order to, again, direct Turkey in a certain direction. So this may create a change in our relations with the West, in Turkey's relations with the West, and it may need also rekindle a reform process in Turkey with regard to especially these political criteria. Second important issue we can say is Brexit, because now Brexit is finally over and we are now with a new sort of agreement between the United Kingdom and the European Union, which will be the basis of the future relationship. And today also Turkey has signed a trade agreement with the United Kingdom, and also there are expectations that, again, within 2 years' time, this will be followed up with further negotiations, and a strengthened trade and economic partnership will be established. So, of course, we know that the United Kingdom has a more pragmatic and issue-oriented approach to Turkey, a more favorable approach, which also includes, of course, advanced cooperation in defense and foreign policy issues. So this may also maybe create a factor on the relationship with the European Union. It will be sort of a new avenue for Turkey to explore in its relations with Europe, and it may also change the status quo in its relationship with the European Union. Another important issue, the third issue, which I will just shortly touch upon, and then maybe we can further explore these issues in the question and answer session, is the post-COVID restructuring. Of course, I mean, all countries have suffered, especially both, of course, in terms of health, humanitarian issues, and also in terms of economy and society. And it has been a quite fast transformation process, further digitalization, also maybe transformation with regard to the labor market, business, economy. So we have seen an accelerated process, transformation process, and we know that especially the European Union is trying to adapt to these changes with its twin goals of digitalization and Green Deal. So because of Turkey's close economic relationship and the fact that the EU is the #1 trade partner, we may see that these technical and economic issues may also draw Turkey closer to the European Union. Conversely, the EU may also feel the need to engage with Turkey more, especially considering its goals of building resilience and strategic autonomy in the post-COVID era. So Turkey, as an industrial power, as a country that has adapted to the EU market due to the customs union, we can see an advancing economic integration, which may also hopefully spill over to the political field because of this urgency of the transformative impact of this new agenda, post-COVID agenda. And a fourth issue is the Future of Europe conference. We have expected this Future of Europe conference to start in 2020, but it was postponed, and we may expect that it will convene this year and it will continue for a few more years. So this will be a platform where the future of Europe is going to be discussed, its relations with candidate countries or countries like Turkey that are not member states will be discussed. Turkey's involvement in this process will be vital, and what sort of a new contractual relationship could be forged between the parties, I think will be one of the most important aspects of relations in this year. Lastly, of course, this is an issue which is related to the other speakers' agenda or their topics. Turkey's relations with this region, Turkey's relations with Russia are also going to have an impact. Here, we will maybe see Turkey seeking to strengthen ties to the European Union in order to balance its regional goals. It may also, the EU may also seek to strengthen relations with Turkey in order to prevent Turkey's drift towards countries like Russia or China. So much will depend on the geopolitical tensions, whether or not they will be resolved or moderated in this new year, or whether they will be managed in a more diplomatic and multilateral way. So in this regard, the outcome of the March European Council, I think, will be critical. And beforehand, whether or not the EU and the United States will come up with a common approach towards Turkey will also make a difference. So thank you very much. Let me stop here.
Thank you, Çiğdem Hocam. I mean, you give a really comprehensive review with such a short time, so thank you. We definitely have lots of questions. So now I'm going to switch to Kılıç Burakanat. So one of the biggest stories of this year was the elections in the US. So there is a change in White House, and lots of people are wondering what will be the implications of this change. But the change did not come so easily. So I'm giving the floor to Kılıç to reflect more on this.
Well, thank you very much. And a couple things actually. For the United States, probably this was one of the most consequential years in its history, due to both the pandemic, that the United States has been at the epicenter of the pandemic for the last 10 months. And then the economic setback together with the pandemic, that would be probably the worst economic downturn since 1929 economic crisis. And in May, it was the race riots and the demonstrations after the Floyd incident, which was probably the most crowded and the worst moments of the U.S., especially in racial relations in U.S. since the 1969 demonstrations and riots after the assassination of Martin Luther King. And in the midst of it, the United States went to an election in a very divided society, and election results demonstrated that United States is divided and will remain divided in the coming years. It will be a big assignment for Biden administration to be able to bring the Americans together here. So how about the US-Turkey relations? When we were closing 2019, actually, the relation was probably the worst moment of its history. Because of COVID and so many things, because of this very long year, actually, that we mostly forgot about what happened in 2019, September, October, and November, those 3 months, right? There was a series of resolutions against Turkey. President Trump announced some sanctions against Turkey. Then there were negotiations. Then there were more resolutions about Turkey's Syria operations. And many people argued that it is coming to the worst moment in the relation. And unfortunately, in the last few years, we have been saying at the end of the year, when we are doing these meetings and evaluating Turkish-American relations, we always consider that this was probably the worst year. This was probably the worst year. And in 2020, mostly due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the crisis areas in the relations were mostly frozen until the very last month. And they did it, it happened again. And in last 2 weeks, the president's announcement of the CAATSA sanctions brought another critical juncture to Turkish-American relations. So we have a new administration now, and what are the continuities and changes? And it's important to understand that with the existence of so many crisis areas in the relation, now when we are talking about the relation between two countries, instead of focusing on the areas of cooperation, we mostly focus on these crises and what will happen to these crises, because the real problem in Turkish-American relation is when a crisis happens, it is very hard to resolve it, and it continues for years. We have seen this in YPG issue. We have seen this S-400 issue. So it becomes a continuation of the crisis for for consecutive years. So I have three actually things to say. Number one is the continuation, which crisis will continue. Number two is changes. We will have some new crisis probably in the relations in 2021. And at the end, I will state some opportunities. So it will be three crises that will continue, three crises that may evolve in this year, and of course, the three areas of opportunities. Number one, the continuities. I see that in 2021, with the Biden administration, actually, in the next 4 years, one of the most significant crisis areas in Turkish-American relations, namely the Congress and its role in Turkish-American relations, will continue. So Congress will continue to follow this very anti-Turkey position that it had been following for the last couple of years. I don't see any major changes happening there. It is the job of Biden administration actually to fix this problem, to convince the members of the Congress not to pass any more sanctions act or any resolution or legislations that would destroy the mutual trust between Turkey and United States anymore. It is important to understand this because in the history of Turkish-American relations, Congress has always been a significant factor in the relations, from the arms embargo of 1970s to the influence of ethnic lobbies in 2000s, 2010, and now again, both the influence of ethnic lobbies, the arms embargoes, and everything makes the White House job really difficult to stabilize its relations with Turkey. So the Congress, we will hear a lot about the Congress in US-Turkey relations. Secondly, the Russia factor. Again, this is something historical, that Turkish-American relations had always this Russia factor. Even at the beginning of the relations in 1950s, the main logic of the relations, the main threat perception of the relation was Soviet Union. But starting from 1960s, the rapprochement in Turkish-Soviet relations, Turkish-Soviet economic cooperation in those years raised eyebrows in Washington, D.C., created skeptics about the future of Turkish-American relations. So whenever there is a rapprochement or any kind of improvement of relations between Turkey and Russia, we have seen that there are debates in Washington, D.C. Those debates can change its tone. When the US-Russia relations are not good, it can be a shift of axis debate. If Turkey is turning away from the West, if Turkey is turning towards Russia, etc. When US and Russia relations are more stable, it becomes less, in terms of rhetoric, it will be less confrontationless, but it will still have some kind of question mark, some kind of skepticism about this. So due to S-400s, and probable, you know, like the probable cooperation with Russia in Syria, if it happens, continuation of Astana process at least, will create some kind of tension between Turkey-US relations, especially given the fact that Biden himself considered Russia as the most significant national security threat to the United States. Secondly, thirdly, the public opinion. So in addition to Congress and Russia factor, public opinion will continue to be a factor in the relations. It is usually stated, you know, in media that it is mostly the anti-Americanism in Turkey is underlined, but the anti-Turkey attitude among the foreign policy elite in Washington, D.C. is a significant issue. And we have seen this in last year, actually, when Turkey launched its Syria operations. We have seen that the foreign policy elite in Washington, D.C. somehow consider Turkey's operation in Syria against the U.S. interest. There were claims that Turkey may commit genocide in Kurdish population in these areas, and these people were the people who are some of them were former foreign policy makers, those who know the region well. So this is mostly, instead of concern about a genocide or any kind of Turkey's action in the region, seems more of an anti-Turkey attitude among these experts and former foreign policymakers. And unfortunately, this will continue, and the anti-American attitude in Turkey will continue as well, due to mostly right now about the U.S. assistance to YPG and the sanctions that U.S. adopted towards Turkey. So these will continue. Most of these crises were there actually when Biden was vice president 4 years ago. So it was the Congress, the role of the Congress was there, Russia factor was there, Astana process started in late 2016 actually. But even before that, there was skepticism about Erdogan-Putin summits. Each and every time they met, there were question marks, there were statements of concerns among by some officials, and public opinion was there as well. So these three will continue to exist. So since Biden left, there are three more things that evolved actually. Number one is Eastern Mediterranean crisis, and again the relations between Turkey and United States, especially in terms of Congress, in terms of public opinion, get so much actually intricate that the Eastern Mediterranean become a more complex issue. Instead of being an initiative of the executive office, now we have a bill in the Congress which was enacted last year actually, Energy and Security Partnership Act in Eastern Mediterranean. And this will continue to exist, and we know that Biden himself was very much invested in Eastern Mediterranean and Cyprus issues when he was vice president. We know that during the campaign process, he wrote these letters to the Greek American community saying that he would, in quote actually, he would stop the Turkish aggressiveness in the region. So these are the Eastern Mediterranean crisis that started, you know, like with Pompeo's especially initiatives with Greece and Israel, and the Greek part of the Cyprus will probably evolve, continue to exist, but evolve in this period. The second one is YPG issue, one of the probably the weakest point in Turkish-American relations. Probably it led to one of the worst crises of mutual trust in the relations. The YPG issue evolved slightly since Biden left the White House. It was the Obama administration that started the U.S. partnership with YPG, but it's evolved after the Trump's decision to withdraw its forces, and after the agreement between Mike Pence, Vice President Pence, and President Erdogan in Ankara in October 2019. However, I think it will evolve a little more with the Biden administration. In Democratic Party foreign policy platform, before the elections, Biden campaign asserted that they will continue their relations, again in quote, with the Kurds of Syria. Of course, it meant the PYD and YPG groups over there. And but the situation changed since he left White House 4 years ago. And the areas that YPG controlled now smaller than what it used to be. And Turkey's military assertiveness, especially against the YPG, against its border security, is much more obvious. And Turkey's power projection is much more visible in the region. So this crisis will also continue to evolve depending on Biden administration policy on Syria and SDF. And finally, another crisis that will evolve is again, it is related a little bit about the Congress, but the potential resolution that will come to the fore against Turkey. Mostly it can be about the resolution about 1915 events. It may be resolutions about the crisis in Nagorno-Karabakh. And we know that Biden, during his campaign, mentioned that if he becomes the president, he will recognize the genocide in April 24th. So it will be another evolving crisis. And the fact that after his inauguration, it will be only 2 to 3 months to April, we will see a major crisis if he does what he said in his tweets before. So after those bleak pictures, what are the opportunities? Are they going to have some opportunities? Number one, it will depend on the US foreign policy. So we have seen a lot of uncertainties and unpredictabilities in US foreign policy for the last couple of now decades, unfortunately. And in two policy areas, towards Iran and towards Russia, we have seen different administrations taking different positions. And these positions significantly affect Turkey's relations with the US in regards to those areas as well. As you may recall, during the Bush administration, in his first term, he wanted to mend ties with Russia, improve relations with Russia. He even said that when he met Putin, from his eyes, he can see his soul. And there was so many optimism about US-Russia relation, especially in the war against terrorism. But in the second period, in the second term, we started to see a deterioration of US-Russia relations. Again, in the first term of Obama administration, we remember US-Russia relation as a reset. The most significant concept was the reset. But again, in the second term, due to Ukrainian issue, due to Snowden affair, due to Russia's military intervention to Syria, we started to see Russia-US relations basically fall apart again. And again, Trump administration, we have this unpredictable, uncertain US-Russia relations. And these relations, unfortunately, impacts Turkey's relations with the US in regards to some areas that Russia is active. So one of the most critical areas of cooperation, if Biden administration would understand, would be again in regards to NATO, in regards to Turkish geopolitics, and in regards to Russia, because there is a heterogeneity in Russia-Turkey relations. Russia-Turkey can work together in Syria, despite some crisis, some disagreements, but we know that they were on different sides in Libya. They do not agree on Ukraine. They are totally on different sides on Ukraine. So we will see what will be Biden administration policy towards Russia, towards those crises in Libya, in Ukraine. And if there would be any meaningful policy with a strategy, a long-term strategic perspective, that can be a potential area of cooperation both in Libya and in Black Sea between Turkey-US relations. Another thing is that we have to mention is the relations are now, I think there is both sides are, there's a fatigue in terms of the crisis. The relation has been a crisis-driven relations for the last probably 10 years now. especially after the beginning of the Syria crisis. And each and every time, other than some small issues, two countries couldn't resolve those problems. I think if Biden wants to have a comprehensive review of Turkey-US relations, I think it is a good time. These crises can be opportunities, since the expectations are right now very low, since both countries had been fatigued with these crises. I think in the next couple of years would be a good opportunity to review all of these areas, including Libya, Syria, Nagorno-Karabakh, geopolitical issues, YPG issue, and to come up with a package, what we can call a grand bargain, because we have seen that the presence of a crisis area at the end of the day poison the other areas as well, because of the decreasing trust between two countries. So I think it would give an opportunity for Biden administration and Turkish government to come up with a grand bargain to get all of these problems together and try to resolve them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kılıç. So as we see, there are too many issues, items. Some of them have been long-term postponed. So it will be very difficult for anyone in Washington and in Ankara to address all these issues. So we'll see. We're hoping that this will be a turning point in the positive direction. We don't expect a resolution, but I think this will be a significant year in terms of all these expectations. So thank you, Kılıç. We'll have lots of questions to you as well. So our final speaker will be Professor Vishne Korkmaz. So today there was an important meeting between Turkish and Russian foreign ministers, and also increasing relations with China. So there's the shift of the vaccines. So China and Russia are increasingly becoming important elements of Turkish foreign policy and also the public debate. So Professor Korkmaz will reflect our relations with these two important countries.
Thank you, Talha. I want to start with Turkish-Russian relations, and then we'll continue with the other aspects without repeating the major points that other commentators established already, because all these relations actually in the same geopolitical scene actually are linking together. In terms of Russian-Turkish relations, we know that there are certain traditional cooperation areas, and usually we use the concept of, or the framework of, interdependency to describe these cooperation schemes emerge from these from the relations between two capitals in these cooperation areas. And since the normalization of relations between Russia and Turkey after the jet incident, we can observe a kind of transformation in this interdependency from more asymmetrical one to more symmetrical one. This implies that, of course, Ankara has increased its bargaining power vis-a-vis Russia. In terms of this picture, I think nothing changed in 2020. If we need to summarize very quickly, in terms of economic relations, yes, if you remember, once President Erdogan and President Putin set the target of bilateral trade volumes to $100 billion trade volume, and like in China, in Chinese case, we observed similar kind of trade target. Of course, because of the pandemics, because of the restrained economic energy demand, restrained economic relations in terms of tourism, etc., etc. This kind of volume actually was not achieved by two countries. But despite of this fact, despite of pandemic and the difficult economic conditions on global wise, they kept their almost symmetrical interdependence alive. At the beginning of 2020, I think in January, TurkStream natural gas pipeline has been inaugurated. It was very important project for both Russia and Turkey. It's actually stretched to the neighboring countries like Greece, Bulgaria, North Macedonia, etc. And the natural gas is transported to these countries. This means this means a lot for Russia, because this means actually Russian gas access to European markets. It is also an important project for Turkey, because it represented that Turkey continue her plans in terms of energy diversification strategy. Also, beyond this, we know that in very recently, in December or November, Bulgaria announced that she has completed the onshore extension of this pipeline under Balkan Stream, under the name of Balkan Stream. So at the end, Turkey may use all this framework of cooperation in the future, when she will decide to enter the market with its own resources. Also, at the end, this project definitely strengthens Turkish bargaining hand in terms of long-term contracts with Russia in their energy trade. We know that the duration of long-term energy contracts, gas contracts with Russia will be ended in near future. And as a positive sign, for the first time in history, Gazprom export during the last month, I think, concluded the spot sales to Turkish markets, and this actually underlined the fact that Turkey and Russia will come to more affordable and more advantageous price deal in near future, after these long-term contracts will be ended. Another topic in the traditional cooperation areas between Russia and Turkey is usually pointing out S-400 issue. S-400 issue, of course, is not just an economic issue, and definitely it was not an easy decision for Turkey. But at the end, in 2020, final shipments of S-400 components were completed, and Turkey tested S-400s in October. In September 2020, another development occurred in another strategically important traditional area of cooperations. I mean, Akkuyu nuclear power plant. Second unit of Akkuyu nuclear power plant was completed, and in November, Ankara granted construction license for the third unit of NPP, Akkuyu NPP. So all this means that even under the conditions of coronavirus impact, Both parties continue to cooperate in these strategically important areas, and they actually go forward in their cooperation. So I think we can read the recent mutual prize voiced by Putin and Erdogan within this framework, within this picture. Both leaders actually defined each other as reliable partners and reliable leaders. So it actually underlined how the cooperation pattern emerged from these traditional cooperation areas for Ankara and Moscow. Then we should ask an important question. What about geopolitics? How these smooth, reliable relations in these traditional cooperation areas create an impact on geopolitics, or transform the geopolitical relations between Ankara and Moscow to a smooth, reliable one? First of all, we should say that they have not so smooth relations in terms of geopolitics, because both actors develop their own anti-access area denial capabilities, almost in the same geography, ranged from Caspian Basin to North Africa. So in these terms, they emerge not just partners, but also rivals. However, despite of this fact, however, they can end the dispute or the disagreements or the conflict of interests among themselves with cooperation if they see a greater strategic benefit embedded in the cooperation. This benefit can be in form of balance against unwanted developments, or against other rivals, or something like that. So in form of balance of power, or it can be in form of filling the vacuum or strengthening the strategic foothold vis-a-vis the other actors active or engaged in the geopolitical rivalry or competition. So, according to me, there is a cold-blood geopolitical realities behind the Moscow-Ankara relations, rather than ideological, ideational convergences, or, as usually cited, the shift of axis. Indeed, Turkey and Russia keep their differences and disagreement points in a number of issues, like future of Syria, future of Libya, Crimean issue, etc., etc. Please remember, in the first half of 2020, we continue to talk about the delicate balance between in Syria, especially in Idlib. We know that because of regime attacks and because of violation of Sochi agreement, Sochi deal, the situation in the ground threatened Turkey and Turkish forces there. And many scholars and observers asked the question whether Russia wanted to test the limits of Turkey on the ground. Nevertheless, in March, Putin and Erdogan met in Moscow, and they established a new statu quo in Idlib. And this statu quo, more or less, was functioning throughout 2020. Ankara started to redesign and replace its own deployments and observation points there. It could be a Russian test. It could be a Russian attempt to strengthen regime's position in Syria. It could be a manipulation by others because they want to see a deepening rift between Moscow and Ankara, definitely. But at the end, it is not surprising for us to observe that Russia is not so willing to give more maneuvering space to Ankara in the geopolitical sphere, where Moscow also tried to acquire or strengthen her own area, her own control areas, let's say. During 2020, Russia tested Ankara's determination and Ankara's capabilities by different instruments, by using regime, by using regime YPG contact in Ain İsa, in Kamışlı, in Idlib, etc. In Libya, she tested Turkey's determination by destabilizing power base of Sarraj government. But what is important for Ankara is lying under the fact that despite of all these tests, Ankara's position for forward defense and her determination and capacity to deter threats did not change. Just contrary, maybe it is told, it is written that Turkey's position and posture in Syria, Libya, and in Eastern Mediterranean generally has been consolidated. This brings us to another statu quo. Another new statu quo emerged in Northern Karabakh in the last half of 2020. We can questionize why Armenia attacked to Azerbaijan, or why Russians did not prevent such kind of action. We can also list number of reasons for this situation, but at the end, I believe that it was maybe another test of Russia, another Russian test for Turkey. But after observing that Turkey was so ready to act on very timely basis by using the strategic opportunity to provide support to Azerbaijan, then Russia amended its strategy and became open to give certain concessions to Baku and Ankara in South Caucasus. Why? Because Kremlin actually, under new statu quo, which is based on both the trilateral agreement made, trilateral deal made between Armenia, Azerbaijan, and throughout mediation of Moscow, and memorandum of understanding signed between Ankara and Moscow. Under this new statu quo, Moscow actually succeeded to peel the West away from South Caucasus. So it's a great strategic, actually gain, the great strategic benefit that Russia attained after this Nagorno-Karabakh deals. And Turkey strengthened her own position, strategic foothold in the Caspian Basin. So because of this win-win situation, because these two actors perceive a greater benefit embedded in the cooperation, they actually succeeded to establish this new statu quo. This foothold that Turkey achieved in South Caucasus, together with her deepening relations with Ukraine, can be evolved as a balance against Russia, or can be evolved in more institutionalized multilateral cooperation scheme, which is also voiced by Erdogan under the six-party cooperation scheme like formation. To sum up, in 2020, in terms of geopolitical issues, Ankara and Russia continue to have what I call two T's and two C's in their relations. They tested each other, they talk with each other, they cooperate when they see greater strategic geopolitical benefit embedded in the cooperation, and they actually consolidated their own strategic footholds in Syria, in Libya, and in Caucasus. So they emerged both. They ended 2020 as both partners and rivals. And what's important is that Turkey has now more diversified and balanced relations with Russia, and also Turkey and Russia have a kind of cooperation pattern in between each other, and I think that in 2021 this cooperation pattern continues to exist, and Turkey continues to have more diversified relations with not only Russia but also China, because diversification, balance of power, and strategic autonomy are the three issues underlined by Turkish foreign policy makers, elites, and also supported by public opinion. I stop there to have time for the questions. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Vishnu Hocam. So, yes, I mean, it was a really very tense years, I mean, for Turkish-Russian relations. So Libya, Syria, Idlib, and Nagorno-Karabakh was tested. So fortunately, the relations survived those three major issues. So I will start from the questions from the reverse order. So as we know, there is already a pressure on Russia, on Ukraine and Belarus. So the ongoing protest, Belarus, and President-elect Biden will probably focus on some of the issues. So how do you think the pressure on Ukraine and Belarus may affect Russia's relations with Turkey? Do you see any, intensification of the tensions due to some NATO or EU involvement? So such a risk in Turkish-Russian relations in the coming year?
Okay, this question is actually the most asked question maybe nowadays. I'm not sure what will be Biden's impact on Western relations with Russia. Why I why I made this statement? Yes, Biden during the electoral campaign declared that Russia is one of the threats against United States of America. China is another one. So yes, he underlined that Biden administration will have tendency to see Russia as threat, as challenge, and also we know that Biden administration, or Biden during, we know his speeches in electoral campaign, he underlined all these liberal values like democracy, human rights, free elections, etc., as liberalization of markets, etc., etc. So, of course, his team, his foreign policy team, can use all these aspects to strengthen pressure against Russia, since, as you mentioned, there are also these conflictual points like Ukraine, like and maybe Belarus, Moldova. We can actually add more topics to the list, like Russian meddlement in the elections of the Western governments, like Russian, cyber capabilities, etc., etc. But related to Russian main instrument to change, to shape the geopolitical scene in the European neighborhood, which is the main scene of the transatlantic relations. As we know, Russian A2AD capabilities, Russian area control capabilities, and Russia, by using different instruments, already closed certain areas like Crimea, like certain areas in Syria from the access of their rivals. And I am not sure what Biden administration can do about this capability. Peeling Russia from these areas needs real enforcement measures and mechanisms, and these enforcement mechanisms and measures carry the risk of direct confrontation with Russia. So I think Biden administration, of course, depending on its Chinese policy, how he prioritizes China and Russian threats, we don't know. We cannot be sure about this. But depending on his Chinese policy, he can use on rhetorical level some pressure issues at the face of Russia. But apart from that, I'm not sure whether he can really risk direct confrontation with Moscow. This is important. Why? Because if it is so, the balancing logic necessitates more close, strengthened relations with NATO countries or partners who has also capabilities in Black Sea and Mediterranean. So that means more strengthened relations with Turkey is actually in accordance with the balancing logic. But there are also other issues related to Biden administration, Eastern Mediterranean policies, because Biden administration or United States of America, yes, USA has a strategic posture, strategic existence in Eastern Mediterranean, but USA also continues to use other instruments like its alliance with PYD, like its alliance and support to Greece, like its alliance and support to Greek Cypriots, etc., etc. So how these instruments will be in accordance with the balancing logic that necessitates more strengthened relations with Turkey is not clear yet, and Biden administration actually has not clarified this point yet. We will see, but in any case, I expect the continuation of Turkish-Russian relations, not because of ideological convergence between two parties, but because of the job they can give certain concessions and they can make certain deals related to geopolitical opportunities. They used to do this, and without a unified and inclusive Western approach to Russia, including, inclusive for Turkey, Western approach, these the divisions in the Western world will definitely create certain kind of vacuums in both Black Sea and Eastern Mediterranean, and these vacuums will create opportunities, geopolitical opportunities, as well as risks for Moscow and Moscow and Turkey will choose to use these opportunities, and they cooperate to deter certain risks.
Thank you. So it means the complexity in Turkish-Russian relations will continue. So Washington,
yeah, that's true.
Washington will even make it much more complicated in the coming months. So, okay, thank you. So, Kılıç Hocam, we have lots of questions with regard to Washington. So there's a administrative change, but so you mentioned too many issues. So, and possibility of grand bargaining definitely is something, but how likely do you think is the Biden administration can just skip or avoid the issues with Turkey and leave it to as it is? And also in relation to this, I mean, how likely is Turkey is a priority? I mean, he already has some agenda items with regard to Russia and China. So, and military definitely is one of the key issues in Turkish-American relations, but can the American side try something else? I mean, during the Trump administration, the trade discourse was tried to be injected into discussions, but do you think it can happen or it can continue in Biden administration as well?
Well, there are a couple questions over there. So let me say the economy has been the weakest part of the relations. It was the weakest chain in Turkish-American relations. And it couldn't be resolved. There were several attempts by Turkish government actually to broker a free trade agreement with the United States and to increase the trade relations during the Obama administration. And when President Trump became president, it became increasing the trade volume to $100 billion. So it was a very ambitious goal, and there was actually a good work on the infrastructure of how to increase this trade volume. But now we are not sure if Biden administration is going to pursue this, because Biden administration is much more willing to pursue trade relations in a multilateral settings. So we will see probably that in Asia Pacific, they will try to have this multilateral trade agreements. In Europe, they will try to resolve the trade disputes between two countries that occurred in Trump administration and try to come up with an initiative, a more transatlantic initiative. And it will be critical whether Turkey would be part of that or not. And secondly, is Biden, like the one thing is, yes, Biden administration has a very busy domestic public agenda, right? The COVID-19 crisis, we already now many people are projecting that the first 6 months of the 2021, we will continue to discuss and we will continue to deal with the COVID-19 issue. President-elect Biden already said that the hardest part is still yet to come for the United States. So until the vaccination and what they called herd immunity is achieved, which they projected to have it by September or October of 2021, we will continue to have these debates, and we will continue to have the stimulus packages and reviving economy in the United States, and of course the race issues. However, the Biden administration is willing to do something different than the Obama administration. And that is, they are planning to do what we call nation building at home while trying to project US leadership and US power abroad. And this US power is related to US partnership with its allies. So is Biden going to be investing in US foreign policy in the next 6 months? It looks like it, because the way that he appointed key players in foreign policy making, including Secretary of Defense, Secretary of State, and National Security Advisor. All three of them, Biden have been working for years now. All three, at least the Secretary of State and National Security Advisor, known as Biden proteges. That shows that Biden wants to run the foreign policy and wants to invest in foreign policy. And his previous experiences also demonstrated that he is more comfortable in foreign policy issues, especially given that if the Senate will be continue to be controlled by the Republicans, and if there will be too many legislative hurdles for the reforms that he wants to adopt, I think he is going to invest more on foreign policy in the next couple of years. And the US image abroad, US standing abroad, US cooperation with US allies abroad would be a priority for him, which he mentioned both in his foreign policy platform and which his appointees right now, Secretary of State appointee and National Security Advisor appointee, both mentioned that they will be heavily invested in strengthening US diplomacy abroad. So is Turkey going to be a priority? Yes, there are other issues, including China and Russia. Depending on where you stand in political position, they are considered as rival, they are considered as competitor, they are considered as enemy, whatever you call it. They are a significant challenge for US foreign policy. And for the first time since 1992, all of the US institutions, including Pentagon, National Security Council, Secretary, the Department of State, State Department, and of course the Congress agree on that. So they will deal with that. However, Turkey is kind of, important for multiple different reasons. Number one, considering that Biden administration is basically promising to increase the partnership with its allies, increasing cooperation, it will be very important to see what kind of policy they will follow with Turkey, because most of the US allies around the world is following US-Turkey relations really closely. What happens in Turkey-US relations doesn't stay in Turkey-US relations. Most of the US allies are trying to see if US is a reliable ally. If US is sanctioning a NATO partner like Turkey, can those kind of sanctions would be adaptable to them as well. So they are following this closely. So to have this relation as is not sustainable for the US foreign policy. Secondly, he gives importance for NATO, and Turkey as a NATO member country is a significant partner here, especially in the areas that he wants to stabilize: Eastern Mediterranean, Middle East. Turkey is it is an important actor, actually one of the most significant actors in these conflicts. And actually Secretary of State Blinken, appointee Blinken, mentioned that for a question about Turkey, he said, yes, we have challenges, but whatever we want to do in Middle East and North Africa and Eastern Mediterranean, we see that Turkey is a major player in these areas. So they need to come up with a solution for the potential problems. And the ball is in their court because of supporting YPG, adopting sanctions against Turkey, using sanctions instead of diplomacy, right? It was mostly unilateral US initiatives. And I think if they want to improve the relations from now on, they have to come up with a plan. And to leave Turkey-US relation as is, we have seen in multiple different instances, is basically not sustainable.
Thank you, Kılıç. So I will also ask a question to Professor Çiğdem Naz. So, I mean, the main question, one of the main questions with regard to EU's game plan is how likely are they to reach a post-COVID-19 strategy, and what kind of role do you think will Turkey play at that? I mean, can this issue change EU's position with regard to Turkey in terms of strategic future? And another question is, what kind of positive steps do you think can EU take with regard to its relations with Turkey? We know the possible negative steps, but what positive steps are likely? You mentioned some of them. How realistic are they?
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Regarding the post-COVID agenda and the future of European integration, I think Turkey is still an indispensable country for the European Union. I mean, having Turkey as an opponent, sort of a rival to Europe, will not be in Europe's interest, I think. Or it will not be in Turkey's interest as well, because there is a need for cooperation in this new, let's say, world order. For the European Union, I think one of the most important issues which has emerged is, of course, the diversification of supplies, supply chains. This was an issue which emerged with the COVID crisis, especially the high level of dependency on China, especially in such critical goods such as medicine, for example, has attracted attention, and there was a move to diversify and to bring supply chains closer geographically to EU. So, of course, there are maybe some alternatives. For example, North Africa or the Western Balkans can emerge as alternatives outside of the European Union. However, of course, Turkey has an advantage there because it has already quite a high level of integration with the European Union due to the customs union and also the accession process. There has been, although at a limited level, a harmonization of the EU acquis, especially in industry, in norms and regulations, and also in competition policy, intellectual property rights, etc. So I think when you have such an industrializing economy, which can also be a source of supply for the European Union, it is difficult to ignore this and to not to, let's say, try to increase the potential of economic integration with Turkey. Hence, the modernization of the customs union, I think, may be on the agenda in this respect. Another, of course, related maybe issue with regard to the EU's need for Turkey, or why the EU should engage more with Turkey, is, of course, that the EU is trying to build a resilience also in this new era. But this resilience cannot be only limited to the EU and its member states, but it should be on a wider European scale. And we also can see this in the new Green Deal that the EU has adopted as a priority for its also circular economy, which it has adopted as an economic growth strategy. Here, of course, I mean, it will be meaningless that the EU only adopts these climate targets only for itself, but especially countries like Turkey that has a high level of trade with the EU should be also encouraged to adapt these climate targets and to decrease carbon-intensive industries' emissions of greenhouse gases. And in order to do that, of course, Turkey will be maybe under pressure to adapt these new Green Deal targets, but of course, without an engagement with the European Union, for example, without, for example, getting certain funds with regard to climate targets from the European Union, also engaging in the process of legislation and consulting Turkey and other candidate countries will be a priority, I think. Otherwise, it will not be meaningful. So I think this will maybe warrant more and more engagement. It will necessitate the need for engagement because after all, the European Union is leading in these new targets. This is, as I've said, is also economic growth strategy. It is also maybe a way of holding the EU together, especially after Brexit, giving it a new sort of reason for existence, a new reason for example, engagement between the member states, because in the recent period we have seen some divergences among the member states with the refugee crisis and with the financial crisis. So I think this may have the potential to revitalize the relationship, and it may also rekindle Turkey's EU relations. However, having said that, of course, this creates maybe an opportunity that both sides can avail in the near future. However, there are also obstacles, of course, we shouldn't forget them, and these are quite serious obstacles. And it also may be at the basis related to the worldview of the parties, how they see the world, and what kind of a place they envisage for the new world order, for the changing world order. So I think for the European Union, they have certain priorities, especially in the economic field, in the climate field, but in the area of foreign policy, security issue, the EU is not really very effective in developing its own policies. So then it is very much maybe under the influence of other great powers. On the part of Turkey, of course, we see that Turkey is also trying to establish a balance in its relations with the West and also some other powers such as Russia or China. So it is trying to create a new avenue for itself and maybe a more independent, a more autonomous path for itself. But of course, it is quite difficult because of the changing balances. So in this search for a new sort of status, for a new role in the changing international order, of course, we cannot be sure about what kind of a direction the two parties will go. But first of all, of course, they have two very important disagreements. And if they are going to engage in further, let's say, integration or further cooperation, these issues should be resolved or at least managed. Maybe a total resolution of these issues is not likely, but a moderate approach to these issues will be a more multilateral approach. One of them is, of course, the Eastern Mediterranean and the Cyprus issue and the very different, very contrasting positions of Turkey and the European Union on these issues. And they have deep roots. So it's not only an issue which has emerged just recently, but they have much deeper roots. So it may be very difficult for the parties. However, maybe a new sort of engagement with regard to the resolution of the Cyprus conflict may emerge, and it may at least moderate the disagreement. And also, of course, the other issue is politics. What kind of a regime Turkey will have, and will this regime be closer to the Western model or to some of the other models that we have? Will it be a model which will be based on the sort of Copenhagen criteria, or will it be more hierarchical, more centralized? And this is also a basic question because it is related to identity and also what kind of a status Turkey wants to have in the new world order. So I think based on what kind of a development we will have on these questions, then the other issue of engagement between Turkey and the EU will become, I think, more apparent and will become more observable, let's say, in the near future.
Thank you very much, Çiğdem Hocam. It seems that what's happening outside of Turkey or EU will also have a significant effect how Turkey and EU will engage in the coming months or years. Thank you for that. Sure. So, Bilgehan Hocam, I'll have two questions to you. I mean, one significant issue is that there are a set of countries in the region are normalizing their relations with Israel. So this will definitely have region-wide impact. But how do you think it's going to affect Iran? Does Iran have any concern about this? And my second question is, what kind of game plan does Iran have with regard to Syria? So it seems that it is likely that there may be some change in the coming months. So is Iran planning to continue its existing position, or is, are the Iranians gonna change their position and maybe reduce their involvement in Syria. So what do you expect in that regard?
During the Trump administration, purging of Arab countries were very much highlighted. On the other hand, there was a crisis inside the Gulf Cooperation Council with Qatar and the remaining countries. And recently, Saudi Arabia is coming to a conclusion with Qatar. Next week, there's going to be a GCC meeting, and probably Qatar and Saudi Arabia will start a rapprochement, and it will have an effect in all the region. Abraham Accords is a turning point, and recently the Biden team has expressed very positive comments about Abraham Accords, which means that Biden administration will pursue Israel policy and they will support this rapprochement between Israel and purging of Arab countries. But in Saudi Arabia, there is kind of a resistance. We cannot get inside information from Saudi Arabia, but some statements from the Saudi officials of Saudi Arabia are very noteworthy. They don't want to repeat the position of Enver Sadat in 1979 with the Camp David agreement. You know, following that agreement with Egypt and Israel, Egypt lost its position, the leadership position among the Arab world, and Saudi Arabia doesn't want to lose its position in the Islamic world and the Arab world. So it's a little bit hesitant about a rapprochement with Israel. And recently, Saudi Arabia is also converting its foreign policy. The Biden administration influenced all of the region before the inauguration, indeed. Actually, Iraq will be an area of rivalry between Iran and Saudi Arabia, but this time I don't see a kind of rivalry that we witnessed in 2007. It was a very hard conflict. This time the rivalry mostly includes the economic sector, because Saudi Arabia has just opened a border with Iraq. Since the first Gulf War, it was closed. So Saudi Arabia wants to have a leverage inside Iraq through the economic terms, because Iraq needs the foreign direct investment. And at this point, there is kind of a rivalry between Iran and Saudi Arabia in the geography of Iraq. And here, the Turkey's position is going to be highlighted, because Turkey has good relations with most of the purging of countries, except Emirates and Saudi Arabia. But recently, Turkey and Saudi Arabia are also refreshing their relationship. And Turkey is also a strategic partner for GCC. And this also enables Turkey to be in more dialogue with all these countries. What about Iran? Iran actually tries to manipulate the problems inside the Persian Gulf. I mean, Iran has recently started a closer relationship with Kuwait. There has been a visit between Iran and Kuwait, and also with Qatar. Iran has good relations. Actually, even with Saudi Arabia, I don't expect a great problem in the coming years, because Iran and Saudi Arabia need each other in terms of oil prices. They are members of OPEC, and recent oil prices are both affecting their economies. So there can be some areas that each even Iran and Saudi Arabia can cooperate with each other. From the perspective of Israel, the situation is more complicated. Trump enabled a great geography for Israel. But on the other hand, Israel still feels itself alone because Turkey and Israel relations are not very deep relations. There are still problems, and also Iran doesn't limit its presence in Syria. So your second question, I think, was about Iran's Syria policy. I actually don't expect any deep shift in Iran's policy towards Syria, but in Syria, Russia is another actor, and also to me, it's a more effective actor rather than Iran. Because the Assad regime's future is mostly dependent on Russia's stance rather than Iran. And inside Iraq, also there are some points we have to mention regarding Iran. There is kind of a distance between Iran and the Hashd Sha'bi. You know, Hashd Sha'bi was formed by Sistani, and inside Hashd Sha'bi, the groups are now distancing themselves from Iran. This is a new development. So inside Iraq, maybe Iran will try to improve its influence through these proxies, but the character of proxies are changing, and Iran will probably still continue its Iraq and Syria policy in order to manipulate US foreign policy and also US position regarding Iran's nuclear program, because it is going to be an instrument for the pre-negotiations. Iran wouldn't want to lose this advantage against the United States. So in the upcoming year, we will discuss all these issues.
Thank you very much, Bilgehan. So I think we came to the end of our panel. So unfortunately, we couldn't touch significant places like Africa, East Asia. So there are lots of agenda items in those continents. So unfortunately, our time is limited. But it seems that there will be a very busy foreign policy agenda for Turkey, and two significant events. So Biden presidency and post-COVID-19 normalization will affect Turkey's relations in all these areas. So it seems that two events will have significant impact. Other than that, I mean, Turkish foreign policy will continue to be very active in 2021. So I would like to thank our panelists, Bilgehan Alegos, Çiğdem Naz Kılıçkanat, and Vishne Korkmaz. So please continue to follow our events at SETA Brussels. We will continue to bring experts from different fields. And I would like to thank our audience as well. Thank you. Good night.